I was 28 when I finally snapped. My name's Ethan, and for the past 3 years, I worked at a mid-sized tech company under the most insufferable boss imaginable. His name was Gerald, and if you've ever had a manager who seemed to take joy in making your life miserable, you'll understand what I went through. At first, I thought maybe he was just tough, one of those old-school bosses who believed in pushing employees to their limits. But no, Gerald wasn't tough. He was a narcissist, a control freak, and worst of all, he had a personal vendetta against me. It all started the day I got promoted. I had been grinding for years, putting in extra hours, fixing other people's mistakes, and basically keeping the department running while Gerald took credit for my work. When the higher-ups finally recognized my effort and gave me a well-deserved raise and a new title, I made the mistake of thinking I had one. Gerald didn't take it well. His passive-aggressive comments started immediately. Big title. Huh? Let's see if you can handle it. At first, I laughed it off, but soon, his challenges turned into outright sabotage. My workload doubled overnight. He started assigning me projects with impossible deadlines, expecting me to work late nights while my coworkers, some of whom had less experience and lower titles, got away with doing the bare minimum. Ethan, I need this entire report rewritten by tomorrow morning, he'd say at 5 p.m., grinning as he handed me a stack of files. Shouldn't be too hard for someone with your new position. I put up with it at first. I told myself it was temporary, that he'd get over whatever grudge he had against me. But it only got worse. He started throwing me under the bus in meetings, blaming me for mistakes I hadn't made. He'd change project requirements last minute and then act shocked when I couldn't keep up. I tried to push through, but the stress was eating me alive. I was barely sleeping, snapping at my girlfriend, missing family events. And the worst part? He knew exactly what he was doing. One day, I confronted him in his office. Gerald, I need to talk to you about my workload. I'm drowning here. He didn't even look up from his computer. That's what the big leagues are like. Ethan, maybe you're just not cut out for it. That was the moment something clicked in my head. He wasn't going to stop. No amount of effort, no amount of proving myself was ever going to be enough. But quitting wasn't an option. Not yet. I started documenting everything. Every unreasonable request. Every time he changed project requirements last minute. Every time he blamed me for something out of my control. I kept emails, saved Slack messages, even recorded a few of our conversations when he got particularly nasty. Then came the final straw. Gerald called me into his office one Friday afternoon, a smug grin on his face. Ethan, I've got a new challenge for you. I already knew whatever it was going to be awful. I need you to put together a full presentation for the board meeting on Monday. From scratch. You'll need to work all weekend. I clenched my jaw. Gerald, the board meeting presentation takes months to prepare. That's not possible. His grin widened. That's why I gave it to you. Let's see if you can handle it. I stared at him, trying to control my anger. He wasn't just setting me up to fail, he was enjoying it. And that's when I knew. It was time. I took a slow breath and forced myself to nod. Sure thing, Gerald. He smirked, thinking he'd won. What he didn't know was that I had already been planning my exit. And when I left, I wasn't going quietly. That weekend, I didn't work on the board presentation. I didn't open a single file. Instead, I finalized my escape plan. Over the past month, I had been quietly preparing to leave. The documentation I had gathered on Gerald's abuse wasn't just for my records, it was leverage. I had also been networking, reaching out to old colleagues and mentors, testing the waters for new opportunities. And then there was my side project, a small consulting business I had been running on the side. I hadn't been ready to go all in before, but Gerald had pushed me past my breaking point. Sunday night, I typed up my resignation letter. No emotion, no explanation, just the facts. I printed it, sealed it in an envelope, and set it on my desk, ready for Monday morning. I walked into the office that day feeling lighter than I had in months. Gerald was already in a mood, barking at people, making his usual rounds of intimidation. When he saw me, he smirked. Hope you're ready, Ethan. Board meeting's in an hour. Let's see if you actually pulled this off. I smiled back. Oh, I'm ready. We all walked into the conference room. The executives were already seated, waiting for the presentation. Gerald took his place at the head of the table, nodding at me to start. I stood up, walked to the screen, and clicked the remote. The screen stayed black. I turned back to the room, pretending to look confused. Huh, that's strange. It's almost like no presentation was prepared. Gerald's smirk faltered. What? I turned to him. Yeah, I didn't do it. The room fell silent. Gerald's face turned red. Excuse me. I pulled the resignation letter from my pocket and slid it across the table toward him. I quit. He grabbed the envelope, barely processing what was happening. You can't just quit in the middle of a board meeting. I shrugged. Looks like I just did. He was fuming now. Ethan, be serious. You're making a mistake. This kind of stunt could ruin your career. I laughed. No, Gerald. Staying here would ruin my career. I turned to the executives. By the way, if anyone wants to know why I quit, I've documented every impossible task I was assigned, every time Gerald sabotaged me, and every time he took credit for my work. I'll be happy to share. The executives exchanged glances. Gerald opened his mouth, but no words came out. He knew I had him. I grabbed my bag and walked out. I didn't bother looking back. What happened next? Well, let's just say Gerald had a very bad day. But the real revenge? That was just getting started. As I stepped out of that boardroom, the rush of adrenaline hit me like a tidal wave. My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept walking, my head held high. The office was quiet, too quiet. People had clearly heard something going down. A few coworkers glanced up from their desks, their eyes flickering with curiosity, but no one said a word. Not yet. I made my way back to my desk, grabbed my personal belongings, and powered down my computer. No hesitation. No second thoughts. I had given that company everything, and all it had given me was stress, sleepless nights, and a boss who delighted in making me miserable. Not anymore. As I stuffed the last of my things into my bag, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Ethan, wait. I turned to see Sarah, one of my closest coworkers, rushing toward me. She looked somewhere between impressed and worried. Tell me you didn't just do what I think you did, she whispered. I gave her a lopsided grin. Oh, I definitely did. She stared at me for a moment, then exhaled. Wow, you really just walked out on Gerald like that. He's been pushing me for months, I said. He wanted me to fail. I just decided to let him have what he wanted, in the worst way possible. Sarah glanced toward the conference room, where muffled voices, some panicked, some furious, filtered through the walls. She shook her head. I can't believe you actually did it. Then she smirked. I mean, I can, but still. I chuckled. Hey, I left behind some documentation if anyone wants to take a look. Her smirk widened. You mean, receipts? I shrugged, nonchalant. Let's just say there's a very detailed folder with timestamps, emails, and voice recordings in my drive. If it happens to find its way to HR, well, that's not my problem anymore. Sarah let out a low whistle. Gerald's going to implode. Good, I said simply. She nodded, glancing around. So, what now? Got another job lined up. I slung my bag over my shoulder. Better. I'm starting my own company. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. No way. Way. She let out a short laugh. Okay, that is next level revenge. I grinned. It gets better. Sarah crossed her arms, intrigued. Do tell. I glanced around to make sure no one else was listening, then leaned in. I've been working on a consulting business for a while now. The best part? I already have a few potential clients lined up. Her eyes widened. Ethan, that's huge. And here's the cherry on top, I said. Guess who some of those clients are? She blinked. Wait, are you telling me? Yep, I said, grinning. Companies that work directly with this one. I'm about to be in a position where I can take clients away from Gerald. The same ones he never let me work with because he wanted all the credit. Sarah let out a low, dramatic gasp. Ethan, that is diabolical. I shrugged. Just business. Before she could say anything else, a loud, furious voice echoed from the conference room. Where is he? Sarah and I both turned toward the sound. Gerald. A second later, the man himself stormed out, his face red with barely contained rage. His beady eyes scanned the office until they locked onto me. Ethan, he barked, marching toward me. My office. Now. I didn't move. I don't work for you anymore, Gerald. You think you can just walk away after what you pulled in there? His voice was dangerously low, almost a growl. You humiliated me. I smiled. No, Gerald. You humiliated yourself. His fists clenched at his sides. You're going to regret this. I tilted my head. Oh? And how exactly are you planning to make me regret it? His jaw worked, but he had no answer. He couldn't fire me. He couldn't threaten me with my job. He had lost all control. That's when I saw it in his eyes, the realization. The fear. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. You spent months trying to break me. Instead, you pushed me into something better. And now? Now I get to watch as your career burns itself to the ground." His face paled slightly. I smiled. Then I turned and walked out of that office for the last time. As I stepped onto the street, I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Hey," I said when the person on the other end picked up. "I'm officially free. Let's get started." Because Gerald had spent so much time making my life miserable, he never noticed that I had been building something for myself. And now? Now, it was time to make sure he felt every bit of what he had put me through. And I had the perfect plan to do it. The next few days were a blur of excitement, nervousness, and a touch of disbelief. I hadn't expected things to fall into place so quickly, but once I'd taken the leap, everything started to move in the right direction. The first thing I did after leaving that toxic office environment was call in every favor I could. I reached out to a few former clients from my consulting side gig, reminding them of the value I had brought to their businesses. I set up meetings with a couple of industry contacts I'd been nurturing for months. And I got to work on a brand new website for my company, designing it to not only showcase my skills, but to subtly position myself as the one who could help companies clean up the messes that Gerald had created for them. It wasn't long before I had clients on board, and the money started rolling in. It felt surreal. Each new contract was a small victory, but it was also a reminder of everything Gerald had taken from me. He had kept me under his thumb for years, and now I was finally free, building something that was mine. But as my consulting business began to take off, something darker loomed in the background. Gerald. He didn't take kindly to me walking out. I knew he'd try to retaliate in some way, but I hadn't anticipated just how far he'd go. It started with emails. Every day, I'd open my inbox to find multiple messages from Gerald, some terse and professional, others more desperate. He was trying to salvage his reputation with the higher-ups, using my departure as the central theme of his explanations. In one email, he referred to my resignation as a loss for the company, and in another, he claimed that Ethan's inability to handle the pressure of leadership was why I'd left. He went so far as to name-drop me in meetings, painting me as a disgruntled employee who couldn't handle the work. It was transparent. Everyone who had worked with me knew I was good at my job. I didn't need Gerald's approval to succeed. But there was something he was missing, something that was beginning to take shape in my mind. I smiled as I clicked open one of his more recent emails, this one addressed to several of my former colleagues. It was full of half-truths, blaming my sudden departure on my supposed failure to meet expectations. What he didn't know, though, was that I had been CC'd on those emails. I didn't respond directly. Instead, I did something even better. I sent my own email to the same people. I sent them the evidence I had been collecting over the years, documents, screenshots, and voice memos. Gerald's sabotage. His tendency to take credit for my work, his manipulation and bullying. I didn't need to slander him in the email. All I had to do was show the truth. The fallout was immediate. I started getting phone calls from colleagues I hadn't spoken to in months, some of them thanking me for the information, others apologizing for not realizing what I'd been dealing with. They were shocked by what they learned, and some were even more shocked by how long Gerald had gotten away with it. The company's HR department was flooded with complaints, not just from me, but from others who had been too afraid to speak up. And Gerald? Gerald was starting to lose his grip. He'd been the king of his little fiefdom for so long that he never saw it coming. My resignation wasn't just a personal loss for him, it was a blow to his empire. The higher-ups who had once blindly followed his leadership were now questioning him. They started reaching out to me, not for revenge, but for advice on how to clean up the mess he'd left behind. And here's where it gets really sweet. Gerald, in his desperation, made the fatal mistake of reaching out to me. It was a Friday afternoon when I got the call. My phone rang, and the name that appeared on the screen made my stomach churn. Gerald. I stared at it for a moment before answering. "What do you want, Gerald?" There was a long pause on the other end. When he finally spoke, his voice was strained, almost pleading. "Ethan, look, we need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of everything I had been through with him. I had to admit, there was a part of me that wanted to gloat. But that wasn't why I had left in the first place. I had left to build something better. Talk about what? I asked, keeping my tone cool. I want to make things right, he said, stumbling over his words. "I know I messed up, okay? I know you're upset, and maybe I pushed you too far. But we can fix this, Ethan. You and me. I cut him off. "Gerald, I'm not interested in fixing anything with you. You don't get to call the shots anymore. I'm not going back. I'm not working with you. I don't want your apology." His tone shifted, becoming more aggressive. "You think you can just walk away from everything I gave you? Everything I did for you? You think you're going to be successful without me? I leaned forward, my voice steady but firm. Everything you gave me? You mean the impossible tasks, the sabotage, the emotional manipulation? Yeah, I'm doing just fine without you, Gerald. Maybe you should have thought about that before you ruined every chance we had to work together. His silence told me everything. He had no idea how to respond. He had never been the one to apologize, never been the one to admit fault. But that was the problem with Gerald. He thought he could control everyone and everything. He had underestimated me. And now, as my business continued to grow, as I moved further away from the wreckage of my old life, I realized something. The true revenge wasn't in making him pay for everything he had done. It was in thriving without him. It was in watching him flounder while I built something real. I hung up the phone, but my victory wasn't over yet. I still had one last move to make. It was time to take what I had built and show Gerald exactly what he had lost. And that's exactly what I did. A few weeks passed, and things at my company were booming. I had officially surpassed the income I'd made working under Gerald, and I had more clients than I could handle. The freedom to build something on my own, without his interference, was more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. But I wasn't finished. There was one last part of my plan I hadn't fully executed yet, showing Gerald what he had lost. It wasn't about revenge in the way people typically think. No, it was something much more subtle, much sweeter. One afternoon, I got an invitation to a corporate networking event in the city. It was the kind of event where big companies sent their top leaders to mingle with smaller, rising businesses. A perfect opportunity for me to meet new clients. But it also presented an opportunity for one final conversation with Gerald. As soon as I entered the room, I spotted him, standing by the bar, looking exactly like the man I remembered, except now there was a certain tension in his posture. He hadn't seen me yet. I waited for a moment before walking over. "Gerald," I said, my voice calm, a hint of satisfaction threading through my tone. He turned, and his eyes immediately widened. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then his face flushed red, and he forced a strained smile. "Ethan, I didn't know you were going to be here." I let the awkwardness settle for a second before responding. "Yeah, well, it's funny. I got invited, and I thought it would be a good way to see how things are going with the company. You know, the company you left me with." Gerald shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting around the room as if looking for an escape. But there was nowhere to run. I had him cornered. "I see your company's doing well," he said, his voice thick with a mix of begrudging respect and annoyance. I smiled, a slow, deliberate grin. "It's going great, actually. We've grown by 40% since I left. Just signed a huge deal with a startup that's expanding globally. I'm in a much better position now than I was before. And it feels so good." The words stung him, and I could see it. Gerald, the guy who had thought I was nothing without his leadership, was realizing just how wrong he had been. I could feel his anger simmering beneath the surface. But I wasn't done. "I just wanted to stop by," I said casually, letting the weight of my words settle in. "You know, to see how you were doing, and to let you know that I'm doing fine without you. You really did me a favor when you kept piling on those impossible tasks. It was exactly what I needed to push me to start something better." There it was. The jab. Gerald's eyes flickered with a mixture of rage and regret. "You think you're better off without me? You needed me," he spat, his voice rising slightly. "Without me, you'd still be stuck in that miserable job. You'd still be under my thumb, just like everyone else." I took a deep breath, keeping my composure. "I don't think you get it, Gerald. The truth is, you were never the reason I stayed. You were the reason I left. I stayed for the work, for the people I could help. But you made it unbearable. You pushed me until I had no choice but to move forward on my own." His face twisted in frustration. "You wouldn't have succeeded without me," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "You're nothing without me." I could have gotten into a long argument with him, but I didn't want to waste my time. Instead, I leaned in a little, my voice steady but sharp. "You know what's funny? I was nothing without you. But now? Now, I'm everything. And you? You're stuck. People are leaving, clients are backing out. You might want to start looking for something else." I turned to walk away, savoring the moment, knowing that I'd finally, truly broken free. Gerald's empire wasn't invincible. It had crumbled under the weight of his arrogance, and now it was just a shell of what it once was. Before I walked out of the event, I glanced back at him one last time. He was standing there, still fuming, but now surrounded by a group of people who were clearly starting to question his leadership. The final, bitter truth hit me then. All he had tried to control, all the fear he had instilled in me, was nothing but smoke and mirrors. He wasn't a king. He was just a man afraid of losing his power. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years, and stepped out into the night. My revenge was complete, not in taking something from him, but in building something that could never be taken away. My name's Ryan, I'm 27, and this happened last Thanksgiving, an event my family now refers to as the reunion, not because it was particularly warm or joyful, but because it was the last time everyone would be under one roof without it turning ugly. I wasn't planning to go that year, if I'm honest. Life had been messy. I had just switched jobs after a rough layoff, was bouncing between apartments, and had spent the past 2 years trying to pull myself out of a rut I didn't even realize I was in. My mom had begged me to come, said it would be good for me to be around everyone, which, in hindsight, is hilarious. I don't come from a massive family, but there are enough of us to fill a house, especially when the cousins bring their kids. The reunion was at my Uncle Tim's place this time, big house in the suburbs, high ceilings, those huge windows that make you feel like you're in a catalog. My Aunt Valerie, Uncle Tim's younger sister, had flown in from across the country. That's who this story is about. Valerie has always been loud. She walks into a room and suddenly everyone's volume goes up by 30%. She's the type of person who talks at you, not with you. And if you ever mention you're doing well, she's mysteriously doing better. Always. My mom used to say she's just insecure, but after a while, that excuse wears thin. When we were kids, she used to pit me and her son Jordan against each other. Every spelling bee, every basketball game, even how fast we finished dinner. I didn't realize it until I was older, but she always made it a competition because she needed Jordan to come out on top. It didn't matter that I never saw it that way, she did. She still does. Anyway, the day before the reunion, I was lying on my too small couch, scrolling through job listings I wouldn't apply to when I saw I had a voicemail. It was from Valerie. That caught me off guard. We'd never exactly been close, and she hadn't even texted me in. I want to say 3 years? I tapped play, curious, and immediately sat upright. Her voice came through, sharp and clear. Ugh, I can't stand Ryan. I don't even know why Tim invited him. He's such an embarrassment. Still floundering, no real job, no relationship, just wasting time pretending he's finding himself or whatever. I mean, come on, he's almost 30. I told Jordan, if he ever ends up like that, I'll disown him. There was a pause, some rustling, then she kept going. Honestly, I hope he doesn't show up. He's always been weird. Remember when he tried to do stand-up comedy for a year? What a joke. Pun intended. My stomach dropped. I didn't even finish the rest at first. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling like I was waiting for it to explain something to me. I wasn't angry yet. I was confused, embarrassed. You know that awful stomach clench you get when someone talks about you behind your back and it confirms every fear you already had about how they saw you? Yeah, that. It felt like middle school again, overhearing the popular kids laugh about your haircut. I played it back twice. Then I saved it. Something in me clicked after the second listen. It wasn't the first time Valerie had made me feel small, but it might have been the first time I had actual proof. Evidence. And not just any evidence, her own voice, smug and dripping with cruelty. I wasn't sure what to do with it yet, but I knew I wouldn't let it go. Thanksgiving Day came. I pulled up to Uncle Tim's place a few minutes late on purpose, just so I wouldn't be the first one there. The driveway was already packed, so I parked down the street and walked up. As soon as I opened the door, the noise hit me like a wave, kids screaming, the clatter of dishes, someone laughing too hard in the kitchen. It smelled like turkey and cinnamon and fake cheer. I slipped in quietly, hoping to just blend into the background. That didn't last long. Ryan. Valerie's voice rang out before I even took my coat off. I turned to see her beaming at me, arms open like we were long-lost best friends. Look at you. You made it. I forced a smile. Wouldn't miss it. She gave me a hug, tight and performative, then pulled back to look at me. Still doing that? What was it? Freelance thing? Sort of, I said. I'm working on a few projects. She raised an eyebrow, smirking. Oh, fun. Well, Jordan just got promoted at the firm. Big corner office. We're very proud. Of course he did. I spent the next hour floating through conversations, trying to avoid her, but it was like she was magnetized to me. Every time I thought I could slip away, she was there, reminding me that Jordan was now engaged, that he'd bought his second property, that he might get published in some legal journal. I hadn't even seen Jordan yet. He was probably hiding in the basement like I wished I could. At one point, I went to get some cranberry sauce and Valerie followed me to the kitchen. I heard you moved again, she said, faux concerned. Must be hard, bouncing around. Stability is so important at your age. I'm fine, thanks, I muttered, trying not to slam the fridge door. I just worry about you, she said, with a syrupy tone that made my teeth clench. Your mom says you're still figuring things out. I guess some people take longer than others. That was it. I had been biting my tongue all afternoon, but that did it. You know, Valerie, I said, setting the cranberry sauce down carefully, you don't have to fake being nice. I know how you feel. She blinked, thrown off. What do you mean? I met her gaze. You left me a voicemail last night. I heard everything. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might actually faint. Her mouth opened, then closed again like she was searching for a response but couldn't find one. For the first time ever, she was speechless. I walked away before she could recover, heart thudding in my chest. I didn't go far, just into the living room where the rest of the family was gathered. I tried to act casual, chatting with my cousin Ellie about her dog, but I could feel Valerie's eyes burning into the back of my head. Dinner started a little while later. Long table, everyone passing dishes around, laughter. It almost felt normal, but Valerie was quiet. She kept glancing at me like I was holding a grenade. I think she was praying I wouldn't say anything. Then my Uncle Tim stood up to make his usual thankful for family toast. That was when Valerie decided to go full Oscar performance. I just want to say, she said loudly, cutting him off, how grateful I am that we're all together. Even Ryan. She looked right at me, that fake smile plastered on her face. It's good to see you again, honey. Everyone turned to look at me. My mom gave me a small, hopeful smile. Valerie looked smug, like she thought she'd won something. That's when I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even look angry. I just said, thanks, Valerie. I wasn't sure I should come this year. But then I got your voicemail. There was a beat of silence. What voicemail? She asked, too quickly. I pulled out my phone. The one you accidentally sent me last night. She shook her head, laughing nervously. I don't know what you're talking about. I can play it for everyone if you want. And that's when the room went silent. Valerie's face twitched. Her smile faltered, twitching at the corners like a crumpling mask. I could feel every pair of eyes at that table shift from me to her, then back to me. The room, once buzzing with idle chatter and clinking silverware, had sunk into pure silence. Even the kids at the far end had gone quiet, sensing something was happening, something not part of the usual Thanksgiving performance. I really don't think, Valerie started, but her voice cracked, and that crack was enough for me to know I had her cornered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. I tapped my phone screen, scrolled to my saved voicemails, and hit play. Her voice filled the room. Ugh, I can't stand Ryan. I don't even know why Tim invited him. It was surreal, like watching a movie and recognizing your own name in the script. Everyone heard it. Her words, her tone, the arrogance. And the best part? I didn't say a thing. I just let it play, my phone held loosely in my hand. I didn't even look at her. I watched everyone else. Uncle Tim blinked, slowly setting down his glass. My mom looked like someone had punched the air out of her lungs. Jordan had frozen, fork halfway to his mouth, like someone had hit pause on him. Ellie, bless her, gave me a small nod from across the table. She'd always known something was off about Valerie. Then came the end of the message. Pretending he's finding himself, or whatever. I mean, come on, he's almost 30. I told Jordan, if he ever ends up like that, I'll disown him. The silence that followed was electric. Thick. No one breathed. No one moved. And then Valerie laughed. A shaky, brittle thing that sounded more like a machine misfiring than a human sound. Oh, come on, she said, looking around like we were all in on some inside joke. It was private. I didn't mean for him to hear that. People vent. Everyone vents sometimes. But you meant it, I said, still calm. Right? You said it. No one forced you. Ryan, don't be dramatic, she snapped, her voice sharpening. You know I've always pushed you to do better. That's love. Calling me a disgrace is love? I raised an eyebrow. She opened her mouth again, but Uncle Tim cut in. Valerie, stop. She froze. Her brother's voice was quiet, but it carried weight. More than I'd ever heard from him before. He looked at her, then at me. Ryan, I'm sorry you heard that. You shouldn't have been spoken about that way. Not by family. Valerie's face twisted. You're taking his side? No one should be treated like that, he said simply. And just like that, the spotlight turned back to her. All her years of smirks and snide remarks. All the little ways she dug at me, or anyone else she deemed less than her. were suddenly exposed under a microscope. No one was defending her. No one was laughing along. For the first time in my life, Valerie was alone in a room full of people who had finally heard her for who she really was. She stood up, rattling the dishes around her. "I'm not going to sit here and be attacked. This is ridiculous." My mom spoke for the first time. Quietly. "Valerie, you attacked him first." Valerie blinked like she'd been slapped. She looked around, maybe expecting someone to rescue her. Jordan wouldn't even meet her eyes. She huffed, snatched her purse off the back of the chair, and stormed toward the front door. Everyone stayed frozen in their seats. No one followed her. And just like that, she was gone. But the silence remained, like we were all stuck in the echo of what just happened. I sat back down slowly, unsure what to do next. My hands were shaking a little. I hadn't planned to play the voicemail like that. I thought I might confront her privately, maybe show my mom later, but in that moment, when she smiled and called me out like she hadn't just trashed me the night before, something in me snapped. And maybe that something had been waiting for years. I looked around. Some faces were stunned. Some were sympathetic. Others just looked tired. Then, for the first time all day, Jordan spoke. His voice was soft. "Hey man, I didn't know she said all that. I'm sorry." I nodded. "It's not your fault. She's all like that. With everyone. Even me." We didn't say much more after that, but his words hung in the air. There was something new in them. Not quite regret, not quite solidarity, but something like it. Something that suggested this wasn't just about me. That maybe Valerie's reign of passive aggression and behind-the-back cruelty had been hurting more people than anyone realized. The rest of dinner was awkward, to say the least. No one had much of an appetite anymore. A few people tried to shift the mood. Uncle Tim cracked a dry joke. My cousin Laura passed around pie like we were still pretending everything was fine, but the atmosphere had changed. Something had fractured. And while it was painful, it also felt necessary. Later that night, after everyone had left and the house had mostly cleared out, I stayed behind to help clean. My mom and I ended up in the kitchen, washing dishes side by side. The hum of the faucet filled the silence for a while, until she finally spoke. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. I didn't say anything right away. I just nodded, the lump in my throat too big to talk around. I didn't cry. Not then. But something softened in me, something that had been hardened by years of biting my tongue and swallowing my dignity around certain people. For once, I hadn't taken it. And for once, someone else had to. We didn't talk much more that night. I think my mom knew I needed space to process everything, and honestly, I appreciated that more than any pep talk. The car ride home was silent, just the hum of tires on pavement and the occasional flicker of street lights on the windshield. My phone buzzed once. Valerie's name. I didn't open it. I didn't even read the preview. I just watched it fade off the screen. The next few days were weird. I wasn't expecting fallout, but apparently that voicemail had hit harder than I realized. Turns out, a lot of people had stories. Quiet stories. Moments they'd brushed off or buried. A comment here, a dig there. Little things that didn't seem worth bringing up at the time, but left scars anyway. The voicemail was like a crack in a dam. Once it split open, everything started pouring out. Ellie texted me first. She said, "Okay, I know it was tense, but that was legendary. I've wanted to say something to her for years." Then my cousin Laura messaged me on Instagram. Laura texted. She told me I was looking tired at my own wedding. Who says that? Thank you for doing what the rest of us were too afraid to. Even Jordan texted again. It's weird, but I think you snapped me out of something. I've been walking on eggshells around her my whole life. Every message made me feel lighter, like I wasn't crazy. Like maybe all those times I'd walked away from a family event feeling small or off or vaguely ashamed weren't in my head. Maybe it wasn't me. And then the group chat happened. We have a family group chat, of course, called The Crew, because my uncle thinks he's cooler than he is. Normally, it's just forwarded memes, baby pics, and the occasional happy birthday chain. But 3 days after Thanksgiving, Valerie sent a message. Valerie texted, "I think it's time we talk about what happened. There's been a lot of overreaction, and I'm not going to let my character be dragged through the mud." That was the start of her downfall. At first, no one said anything. Then Ellie replied. Ellie said, "Overreaction? You literally called Ryan a disgrace in a voicemail you didn't realize you sent." Valerie texted, "People say things in private that they don't mean. It's normal." Jordan texted, "You meant it. And you've said stuff like that for years." The typing bubbles came and went for a while. Then Uncle Tim chimed in. Uncle Tim said, "Valerie, you embarrassed yourself. That's not anyone else's fault. You don't get to blame Ryan for your words." She tried to pivot. Valerie texted, "So now I'm the villain because I have standards? I care about this family's reputation. I was concerned about Ryan." I replied, "You called me a waste of space. That's not concern. That's cruelty." There were more typing bubbles. Then suddenly, Valerie exploded. Wall of text. Capital letters. Passive-aggressive guilt tripping about how she's always been honest, how she's the only one willing to say what everyone else is thinking, and how the family has become soft and dramatic since we all started prioritizing feelings over facts. She even pulled the "I've done so much for this family" card, which was hilarious because Valerie's version of doing things was showing up late, bringing store-bought cookies, and spending the entire event pointing out who gained weight or who looked tired. That's when Laura finally said what we were all thinking. Laura texted, "You know what, Valerie? You're exhausting. Every time we get together, you make someone feel worse. We've all let it slide for years because you're family. But family doesn't mean immunity. It means accountability." That opened the floodgates. People started chiming in, nicely, but firmly. Stories came out. The time Valerie mocked Ellie for not going to grad school. The time she told Jordan's ex she wasn't pretty enough to marry into the family. The time she said I was too sensitive after I lost a job and asked for space. Every story stacked on top of the last, building this undeniable picture of someone who had spent years playing queen bee at our expense, and who, for the first time, was finally being told no. And then she snapped. She left the group chat. Dramatically. Valerie has left the chat. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification Valerie had posted a Facebook status. Full public meltdown. I didn't see it right away, but Ellie screenshotted it. I've never felt so betrayed in my life. I always tried to help this family, to keep people honest. But now I see I'm surrounded by weakness and entitlement. If standing up for decency makes me the villain, so be it. I'll remove myself from your drama and pray for you all. Especially Ryan. She tagged me. She tagged me. The post got 3 likes, all from distant relatives we haven't seen in years. Meanwhile, the comments started rolling in, mostly people saying things like, "Maybe time to take a break from social media," or "Sometimes growth means listening, not reacting." Jordan commented, simply, "This isn't helping. Please stop." She deleted the post 2 hours later. By the end of the week, it was clear Valerie had burned her bridges. Not permanently, maybe families are complicated, but enough that she wasn't going to bounce back like she used to. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her guilt trips got ignored. She even tried texting me again. She said, "I hope you're happy. You've turned my own family against me." I didn't reply. Because I was happy. Not in a petty way. Well, okay, maybe a little petty, but mostly in the way that comes from finally standing up for yourself and realizing the world doesn't fall apart when you do. That sometimes, speaking up doesn't make you the problem, it reveals it. I don't know what's next for Valerie. Last I heard, she was telling mutual relatives she was rethinking who she spends holidays with, which honestly sounds like a win for everyone involved. As for me, I'm doing okay. The family is quieter now. Smaller. But it feels healthier. Less walking on eggshells, more genuine connection. People talk with each other now, not around each other. And yeah, Thanksgiving 2024 will be remembered for a lot of things. It's been a few months now, and things have settled in the best way possible. The next family gathering was smaller, Valerie wasn't there, and no one really asked why. The food tasted better. The conversations were easier. It felt like a group of people who wanted to be around each other, not just people showing up out of obligation. I wouldn't say I took pleasure in how everything went down, but I did feel something close to peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. I stopped apologizing for figuring things out at my own pace. I realized that just because someone is family doesn't mean they're allowed to treat you like less. Respect isn't automatic. It's earned, and sometimes, it's reclaimed. Jordan and I have actually grown closer since everything happened. Funny how that works. We talk more now, not just about family stuff, but real things. Life. Pressure. The weird weight of expectations. Turns out we were both trying to meet a standard that no one ever actually defined. And now, we're building something new. Better. As for Valerie, I haven't heard from her since that last text. Maybe she's still angry. Maybe she's waiting for someone to apologize. But I'm not going to shrink again to make her comfortable. I don't need her validation anymore. Sometimes, The best thing you can do for yourself and for everyone else is stop pretending something broken is whole. That's not betrayal. That's honesty. And honestly, I'm proud of myself.